Hello and welcome to Newsfeed, your daily dose of what people are talking about online, from news stories to what's trending. Now we start in Russia, where the Kremlin has admitted mistakes since ordering mandatory conscription for its troops to fight in Ukraine. Public opposition is growing. On Monday, a draft officer was shot by a man angered at his friend's call-up, and another set himself on fire. Thousands of men have left or are trying to leave the country to avoid being made to fight. Now, a Kremlin report says many of those called up were either unfit for service or had no military experience. And a video has emerged on social media showing conscripts have been sent to the front line with rusty AK-47s. Our defense analyst Ubay Shabandar has more on why the equipment Russia is providing for its conscripts is not the best.
Well, the Russian armed forces simply do not have the necessary infrastructure for such large-scale mobilizations. The Kremlin has not set the conditions for so many Russian citizens to be conscripted involuntarily into the armed forces. And so more than likely, the quality of the reserve troops that will be sent to the front will remain poor, including the quality of the materiel that they will be provided with. And that's going to really doesn't augur well for the Russian troops that will be being sent to the front line to replace the significant amount of casualties that Russian forces are facing on the Ukrainian front lines. And another thing here is that the Russian government has not prepared its population for a large-scale war, particularly involuntary conscription. The Kremlin, of course, still continues to insist to call the war a special military operation, not a full-scale war. So it hasn't set the information conditions here for its population. And that's why we're seeing thousands of military-aged men in Russia fleeing conscription. And that's why we're also seeing significant amount of opposition, particularly in the far-flung republics in the North Caucasus and in the Far East, against conscription in places like Dagestan and in the Far East. The Russian military, of course, has heavily focused on raising recruits both in so-called voluntary battalions and conscriptions in these relatively poor, underdeveloped areas such as Dagestan and in the Far East, and that's going to lead more than likely to continued opposition against this type of mobilization.
American whistleblower Edward Snowden has been granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin. It was 9 years ago when the former U.S. intelligence contractor exposed secret surveillance operations of the National Security Agency and fled to Russia to escape prosecution. Snowden expressed joy over the news on Twitter, saying after 2 years of waiting and nearly 10 years of exile, a little stability will make a difference for my family. Journalist Kevin Goshtola says Snowden was essentially forced to make this decision. He tweeted Snowden sought citizenship in Russia because his government will not let him return to his home country without putting him on unfair trial for exposing the violation of privacy rights. Another user commented, "I'm delighted Snowden secured Russian citizenship. It means the CIA, NSA gangsters will never be able to get him into the U.S."
In my opinion, Edward Snowden is an American hero, and he has not renounced his American citizenship. He is still an American citizen. He's willing to come back here if he can get a fair trial. How can he get a fair trial with the way the country, the United States of America, treats people who are whistleblowers and heroes? He's a loyal American citizen who revealed the crimes of the government. I don't think his becoming a Russian citizen will affect his legal status here because he still embraces his American citizenship and still praises America.
A state funeral has been held in Tokyo for former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated in July. Mourners, including world leaders and dignitaries, were joined by tens of thousands of citizens who came to pay their respects. Indian leader Narendra Modi and U.S. VP Kamala Harris were among those attending. Several political figures gave eulogies, including current Japanese PM Fumio Kishida and former PM Yoshihide Suga. The event passed smoothly despite much opposition. Protesters waving banners and holding up placards showed their displeasure at the funeral. They're unhappy at the cost of the funeral, said to be more than $11.5 million. That's more expensive than the funeral of the UK's Queen Elizabeth. They're also unhappy at Abe's association with the Unification Church and its influence on the country's ruling party. One Japanese citizen pointed out the UK Queen's funeral accepting up to 2 people per country whereas 12 people just from the U.S. alone were attending Abe's state funeral. She said that's going to cost a lot of money. Another complained that the Kishida government was ignoring the will of the people and making fun of them by forcing a state funeral on the taxpayer. Mehmet over here says, as a non-Japanese person, even I can tell how worrisome Japanese people are about the funeral costing so much money in the middle of an economic crisis. Now, while most people were eating dinner in the U.S. or asleep on this side of the world, NASA was carrying out humanity's first test of planetary defense, designed to prevent a potential doomsday meteorite colliding with the Earth. Sounds like something out of a Hollywood blockbuster, but this isn't fake news. NASA's DART spacecraft successfully slammed into a distant asteroid on Monday evening at hypersonic speed. Now, it's the first time in history that humans have tried to alter the path of an asteroid.
4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. Awaiting visual confirmation.
All right. We got it?
Waiting.
Waiting.
And we have impact.
Woo. Fantastic.
What a moment. Very few words can really capture this moment. This is beautiful to watch.
For the first time, humanity has demonstrated the ability to autonomously target and alter the orbit of a celestial object. The impact of DART into the asteroid Dimorphos was confirmed at 7:14 p.m. Eastern Time, when the DART Mission Operations Center here at APL lost signal with the spacecraft.
Lost signal may sound like bad news, but in this scenario, it's actually good news. DART intentionally self-destructed upon smashing itself into the Dimorphos asteroid. The collision was designed to test if space rocks that may threaten Earth can be nudged safely out of the way. Initial calculations suggest DART made impact only 17 meters off the asteroid's center. And that may sound far off in Earth terms, but as a target in space 11 million kilometers away from our planet, it's incredible. DART's impactor vehicle was the size of a vending machine in comparison to the asteroid Dimorphos, which is about the size of a football stadium. It all sounds impressive, but it'll be a few weeks before scientists can confirm whether DART truly was a triumph and able to push an asteroid off its trajectory. And watch what happens if you type NASA DART into the Google search bar. A spacecraft will cross your screen and knock the meteorite image, and the whole page lurches over. Cute, huh? Now, speaking of NASA, the International Space Station has released images of Hurricane Ian over Cuba. It's now heading to Florida and expected to bring life-threatening storm surges. NASA recorded this satellite footage early Monday. The winds were moving about 100 miles per hour, and it said that this is enough water to overrun low-lying coastal communities. Mind you, this footage is from when Hurricane Ian was still a Category 1 storm. As of now, it has intensified into a Category 3. Forecasters expect Ian to become even more powerful when it hits the United States. And before that, the hurricane has been causing a lot of damage. Rivers in northern Honduras burst their banks, causing widespread flooding. Over 12,000 people had to evacuate their homes. Now, this is a country which had already been suffering from excessive rainfall and drought due to climate change.
There are two camps here, Finca Monterrey and Finca Breck, and about 2,000 or 3,000 people are affected.
Look how we're here, full of water, and this has happened twice already.
So the United States has been warned to brace for a major disaster. The governor of Florida has warned this is a really big hurricane at this point. He declared a state of emergency for all of Florida, but urged residents to remain calm. People have flocked to supermarkets to stock up on food, water, medicine, and whatever else they could think of. Many of them upped sticks and drove north to safety. Experts say that the last time a hurricane took this track was in 1950, and they're expecting massive flooding, especially around Tampa Bay in Florida. The Biden administration has declared a public health emergency. And the TikTok account for the weather forecast service BAMWX regularly posts hurricane maps and what to expect in specific areas to help residents.
We do have hurricane warnings issued in red. Places like Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete, hurricane warnings for a major hurricane to now be just off the coast, Category 3 or stronger, 115 mile per hour winds or stronger, 2 p.m. Wednesday, all the way through almost 2 p.m. Thursday. That's a 24-hour period of major hurricane type conditions. Storm surge, life-threatening storm surge. Okay, we're talking land underwater, winds over 100 miles per hour. Elsewhere, tropical storm warnings in the blue, tropical storm watches in the yellow, and hurricane watches up near Gainesville. This is a very serious situation.
While all the officials and experts are making serious assessments and warnings, social media managed to see the lighter side. Since Florida residents are no stranger to natural anomalies, people are joking how no one's fazed about Ian. And then there's the issue of hurricane snacks. You'd be surprised how many people are tweeting about the anxiety of trying not to eat all the snacks they specifically bought for the hurricane. Apparently, that's a thing. And Stephen King, yes, that's Stephen King, the famous horror writer, came up with an interesting argument in his tweet saying they can knock an asteroid off course, but not Hurricane Ian. Please notice his little boo at the end. All right, on to what's trending. Now, each year, more than 100,000 pets in South Korea are abandoned. Besides a growing number of shelters, families are adopting more pets than ever, with cats making up a large portion of that number. Now, Frank Smith filed this report for TRT Digital.
South Koreans are acquiring more cats than ever, with felines now making up a larger portion of the pet population. Park Hae-in has 5 cats and a dog. Her father got her started.
One day, he brought me a cat with a wounded leg needing a hospital, and I looked after her while she recovered. I fell in love with her when I noticed how she purred around me.
Hae-in rescued her cats. Others are sharing their efforts to combat the growing homeless animal problem online. But Hae-in warns potential owners need to be qualified.
They should only be placed through shelters or adoption centers, and new owners' IDs should be checked and then trained, and their job should also be checked to confirm that they can afford providing for a pet.
Each year, more than 100,000 pets, mostly cats and dogs, are abandoned in South Korea. This shelter here north of Seoul was founded by Korea animal rights advocates in 2020 to provide at-risk abandoned animals a second opportunity. Following rescue, they rehabilitate and then rehome animals with new owners. The Bohm Center houses about 200 animals. Elsewhere, thousands of abandoned pets are put down each year. Activists blame an unethical pet industry.
Even though so many animals are dying in shelters and so many pet shops are commercializing animal life itself, problems of preferred breeding, irresponsible purchases and abandonment get repeated.
Still, the COVID-19 pandemic and other crises have shown the benefits of having a pet.
Looking at what's happening in society by coexisting with animals and acknowledging how any cat is not just some cat, important questions emerge, like how should a person handle life?
TNR, or Trap, Neuter, Release programs here seek to reduce the number of homeless animals. And new no-kill shelters indicate South Koreans' attitudes are changing. Frank Smith, TRT World, Seoul.
So, as the nursery rhyme goes, Little Bo Peep lost her sheep, doesn't know where to find them, but leave them alone and they'll come home. Well, hopefully.
I will follow you wherever you may go.
This is the moment a hiker in France encountered a flock of sheep randomly following a runner. It turns out that the sheep were lost and upon seeing the jogger run by, decided to follow her. And as the runner chatted about the situation with the hiker, the sheep waited patiently for her to start running again. And of course, they followed suit. Scientists say sheep instinctually gravitate toward flocking behavior, seeing safety in numbers as protection against predators. So it's no surprise that other people have been responding to that viral video with their own experiences of sheep following them.
I'm being joined on my hike by some rebby. Not sure why they've decided to join me. Yeah.
A writer in the UK also shared this clip of her own strange sheep encounter. Probably a little confusing for the farmer to discover a few of their sheep had disappeared for the day, but seeing as it is an unusual sheep behavior, it's likely this flock and the other flocks featured in today's show made their way back home. And that brings us to the end of today's newsfeed. Find this show on our YouTube channel and do subscribe. See you same time tomorrow.